Good afternoon to everybody. My name is Pött. I'm the presenter for KEMP webcast for today. I hope everybody is doing well and is really excited about this webcast to see what we can actually do if we have the need to replace the Microsoft TMG and find a proper solution which is probably supported by KEMP. And we will focus today on Microsoft's Exchange, Lync and SharePoint, which are the main and the common solution Microsoft has to offer. My name, as I said, is Pött. I'm a managing consultant at ESP IT Solutions AG, and I was awarded a couple of years ago as a Microsoft MVP, and also since a couple of months as a Tier 2 support engineer for Lync, using KEMP already since years. So with me, Alexander Sebastian. He's the technical part and pre-sales engineer for KEMP Technology in EMEA. He will also be ready to answer some questions, so we try also to answer your questions in the questionnaire window which we have open. At the end of the session, probably we will start a FAQ session as well, so you can even type, or maybe we can unmute your microphone so that we can get into a communication, and hope that we will answer all your questions and you will have a wonderful day. Enjoy the presentation and allow me to start. The first thing I want to do today is I want to see what's a proxy server and why do we need a reverse proxy server in our environments. So by the way, I hear somebody talking in the background. Maybe somebody should mute also the microphone so that we have it a little bit more quiet. I apologize for this. Yeah, it's much more better. Great. Okay, let me start again. What's a reverse proxy server and why we should need a reverse proxy server in our environment. So let me explain and start for everybody so that we have the same understandings when we proceed with the presentation. A reverse proxy server handles and deploys resources on behalf of a client from one or more servers. That means actually when we have servers in our internal LAN, we need to publish several applications, probably and mostly well-known web servers. So we want to have a secure environment. That means like we have a multi-tier environment. So our system is secure and safely published and accessible from the outside world, mostly through the internet. It acts and works very simple as a kind of, we know this from several hacking attacks, as a middleman. So which means the server itself, the reverse proxy server, will answer directly as the first tier the incoming requests and will then proxy, or we can also say reroute this request directly to our internal servers, so that we are having something which is the reverse proxy server in the middle, where we can even modify, where we can authenticate, where we can do anything first on the first tier before we hit actually our internal servers. The reverse proxy can do a few things. It can simply forward any request on behalf of a user, which means like it just hits the request, hits the reverse proxy server, and it will directly be then proxied to the internal server. It can also redirect the request. I think the most well-known part everybody has ever seen is when we access, for example, Exchange, which means our Outlook web application services. Then we request for example, with HTTP, and we will be automatically redirected to HTTPS. This is a simple redirect request. We redirect on port biases, which is from port 80, for example, to port 443. We have also several other applications which also have their other requirements to hit, for example, internal deployed websites which are just having the same configuration but separated for external requests. But we see this a little bit more later when we talk also about Lync and what we have to do and what we have to publish there. But nevertheless, there is something else what we should mostly do, especially when we want to connect to some servers which have sensitive data. So we need to pre-authenticate. We really want to make sure that before we hit the internal server and do internal authentications, we want to see that this user is really allowed to request and even access the internal data. So we need to implement a so-called pre-authentication. How we can do this? Simply by just capturing our incoming requests, authenticate this request directly against several directories. One of the most common one, even also implemented into KEMP, is the Active Directory. Probably is our main and our first choice for authentication. So after a request was coming in, the user will be asked for the username and as well for the password. It will be authenticated, and only when it's granted we can then start the entire proxy service itself. Very important, which we also can see later in one of the demonstrations when we see how we want to configure the KEMP system, we will also see that we are having form-based access. Form-based access is for authentication. We want to present a web page where we can type in our username and as well as our password. This will be then captured and also sent and authenticated against the internal Active Directory. So, but as we said, we want to see what actually we can do when the Microsoft Threat Management Gateway, which is the TMG, runs out of support. Let us see what features the Microsoft Threat Management is still offering. There are several features. We have first the router, so this system can act as a router between the internet. It can act as a router even between internal or other external network components. More important, the firewall feature. So we have also a layer 7 firewall feature implemented in TMG. We have antivirus as well. We have the VPN and we have web cache. And nevertheless, the most used feature at TMG is the reverse proxy functionality. So all this one is in one application, and we see whatever we want to extract. If we see and if we compare all the deployments which we found at several customers over the world, it's mostly the reverse proxy server which is used out of all the functionalities TMG has to offer. And reverse proxy is also the topic we want to talk today about it, and we will also mainly focus on this. When we see when the threat management server was released, it was on the 17th of November in 2009. So it's quite long ago. As we also remember, the systems before TMG was released were IIS ARR server, and before that one, I hope some people can still remember, it was the Microsoft Proxy Server. That's out of the season where we were talking about NT4. So Microsoft has some nice experiences in all this security features. But at the end, Microsoft decided by beginning of last year that they want to discontinue the TMG server. Maybe it's not really understandable, but we still have to accept Microsoft's decision. And the decision was made on the 12th of September by last year, so in 2012. But that doesn't mean that the TMG server itself is at the moment not available anymore, so we can't use it. The mainstream support will still end in April 2015. So that means like Microsoft will still continue patching or also closing some misconfiguration as well as some problems they found or maybe which will be announced in the code. So it's still supported on this. But still after April 2015, Microsoft will not do anything on the server itself. There are still some extended support periods for customers who own an enterprise agreement with Microsoft, so that should be roughly anyhow around 2020. But definitely there is no development of the system anymore, which is, I will see this later, in some solutions not fully true because TMG still exists as a hidden application, but as a standalone product, we have to prepare already for a replacement solution. Everybody who is interested in and want also to check the lifecycle database for Microsoft, I put in the presentation the link on TechNet where we see what Microsoft has announced for the Microsoft TMG and also some other products. The most used feature on TMG, which I mentioned earlier, is still the reverse proxy, and the reverse proxy functionality also with pre-authentication features against the Active Directory. It's still the most used feature which we, I think, have everywhere in place right now and use it mainly for exchange. But Microsoft in the past developed several other applications as well, like Lync and SharePoint. While SharePoint is an application mainly or only based on web services, Lync acts there a little bit more different. Only several services. Lync, for example, it's publishing externally or public accessible web pages, as well as so-called web services, also known from Exchange as a web service. We have an Exchange, also the web service, carrying, for example, for auto-discovery and other services. But Lync itself also need to do so because we have to distribute, for example, address books and also some parts around the distribution groups and the resolvement of this. Then TMG, where we have it positioned. Some smaller company also use the TMG server as a firewall, so we can see that the TMG as the only solution deployed in several company environments. But if we use the reverse proxy functionality of TMG, we will find it in the DMC. So if it is a one or it's a two-tier environment where we have positioned the TMG, it's for this not very from interest, but we see that in our DMC we just have the firewall on the outside world, which means it is directly directed and connected to the internet, so that TMG is already secured by some other vendors. And from there we have then an internal positioned firewall, which is also securing once more in case of, for example, TMG would be compromised as well against the internal servers. One feature on TMG I really liked in the past, which is the out-of-the-box, I always say, out-of-the-box high availability. So the redundancy of the systems, it's quite simple. We had very easy deployments over several sites where we can simply configure TMG on one server and have a published and replication functionality, which is sending all the information which we changed on one TMG to all others, regardless if this TMG is in one location or in multiple locations. So that was quite a nice feature, and I think even when we look for a replacement solution, we want to have something quite similar like this. So let's see what KEMP also will do here, and in high availability features for everybody who is already aware about the KEMP technology side will definitely know that we have in the high availability mode as well similar features where we are replicating also the configuration data from one system to the other ones. But as I spoke, which solution we might have to replace the TMG server, there are really a lot of. But not every solution is the right solution for every company or for every environment as well. This depends on the knowledge, it depends on the availability of skilled people and also of the deployment which we have already in place and live. But let's see what feature we have, what technology we can use, and what's behind it. KEMP offered this Edge Security Pack, what we want to talk about it today. The Edge Security Pack is an add-on feature which we have to enable on our load balancers and provides exactly the features that we need for any kind of reverse proxy. Microsoft is here also still on the roadmap, and we see that we have a lot of different technologies. One of the mainly used technologies where TMG is also, because as I said, it's still present, it's the Unified Access Gateway, also the UAG called. The UAG, it's a modified TMG with several other applications, but when you dig a little bit deeper into the Unified Access Gateway, you will find the TMG is still there and it's still present and it's still working in the same way as we know. The only difference there is we cannot configure it directly. We have to use the surface which is provided by the UAG server. So it's not that easy. You have to learn a little bit about the UAG, but then it's still possible. Another really not well-known possibility for reverse proxy servers is the IIS application request routing, so-called IIS ARR. What we actually do here is we build an IIS and use a feature with, which can be enabled on the IIS. The Infinite Information Server there is also grabbing and terminating the incoming request and will then use a rerouting engine, sending the same request then to the destination servers in our LAN. But there is another solution which I also personally really like and I'm really interested in and have also seen it working already, which will come up with Windows Server 2012 R2. This one is called Web Application Proxy. The Web Application Proxy itself, it's also a kind of two-tier hierarchy system, which means internally we are working based on the Active Directory Federation services and have a system placed in the DMZ, which I will illustrate later, where we also have the incoming requests terminated, have possibilities for pre-authentications, and can then send also this request to our internal server. Other solutions are, for example, on Linux-based systems like a Squid reverse proxy, or we have it on several firewalls. Please allow me a couple of words to reverse proxy servers on firewalls. Reverse proxying it's nothing easy. It sounds easy, but we also have to reflect some configuration issues, and we have to raise our voice here to see what's actually happened if we use a reverse proxy server on a firewall, which is not really designed for doing so. There are some vendors at the moment in the market. I don't want to say which vendor has this problem, but what we found out, for example, we published Lync with one of the firewall systems instead of doing it with a proper system, then it could be happen, which is related on some so-called web tickets. Then we had issues on Windows mobile phones or iPhones where when we logged in with a Lync client, accidentally the system was providing us with another contact list. So I think it's not a quite good choice if you log in with your phone and you will receive the contact list, the buddy list of your boss, for example. And this means if we have to deploy it and we want to deploy it with a firewall system, we really need to dig deep and see and evaluate the solution if this one is suitable to us. One part again, because we had this discussion yesterday when I did the same presentation with our German counterparts, I have to highlight a reverse proxy server. It's not a replacement for a firewall. So a reverse proxy server is only doing the proxying, so it's only redirecting incoming requests, but it's not securing any of these requests. So please do not get confused on this, and always be aware, if I want to have a reverse proxy server, then it's maybe a feature on a firewall, but whatever we are looking for, any of the solutions beside of a normal firewall, it's not having any firewall features integrated. This is neither to the KEMP Edge security pack. It's not coming with an IIS ARR or also not coming with a Windows Server 2012. For sure, it's also not coming with a Squid, for example. So that you always keep in mind, please, and when you are considering changing things with your TMGs, also consider that you have the right firewall systems always in place, and that you have a straightforward implementation, including your reverse proxy solution. What solution requirements we have when we have a reverse proxy server? Mainly, we want to have one security feature for the pre-authentication. So we want to see if the user is really allowed making this request, making this request on behalf of himself or making it anonymously. So that's one of the very important features which we have, especially when we see it based on Microsoft solutions. For sure, we have the HTTP to HTTPS redirect, and in the same way as the port redirection. If we have Exchange, for example, the OWA, we want to ensure that when somebody accidentally connects with HTTP only, that he is automatically redirected to an HTTPS website, so that we have also our data fully encrypted and safely presented to the internet client. A port redirection is still the same, because whatever we are doing on port 80 and redirected to port 443, we have the same scenario, for example, on doing web services. If we are having Lync in place, we have everything published to the internet on port 443 or HTTPS. But Lync makes some additional security requirements happen. So we have the IIS deployed with our Lync server, and we will find an internal and an external web page running on it. So this external designed instance of IIS is not acting on the same port because we can't have the same IIS configuration running twice on the same port. So we need to find another one, and that's by default. Everybody know this. Hopefully, it's 4443. So it's a 444 instead of only a 443. So we need to redirect something, and we cannot redirect HTTPS to HTTPS because of the 4443 port. It's still not HTTPS, but it's working similar. So that's why we say we need also native port redirection. For sure, SSL and TLS re-encryption is also on our list. We want to ensure that when we are especially also pre-authenticating some of the requests, we need to be able to read actually the username. And when it's encrypted over SSL, we can simply not read it. So what we have to do is we still need to encrypt the session. Therefore, the reverse proxy server act as an re-encryption and encryption system as well. So we use it with the same or with different certificates, but we just break the tunnel in the middle on the reverse proxy. NAT is as well one feature on reverse proxy solutions which we should use, and high availability is still important because if our internal servers are high available, why we shouldn't have high availability available on systems in front of our internal server. So we have to see and we have to get this consideration in our plannings as well. And one very important part, it must match the Microsoft requirements. It's not only part on Exchange and SharePoint, but Lync is somehow different there. In the Lync environment, because it's one of the very most complex environments Microsoft has designed, we really need to ensure that all our systems connected to Lync are certified. So, and a KEMP load balancer, it's in the certification or past the certification process of Microsoft, so we can really ensure we will be able to support. If you call us as a support engineers, you'll also see that we are supporting the KEMP load balancers when they are attached to the Lync servers. Rather, is it an edge server or is this an internal server? So it's important that we keep this in mind too, and with KEMP, we still have the right solution here in place. Let's compare some of the solutions. Now I gave you an overview, but actually we want to compare what are some differences, and I also put on the very right side some comments where I said maybe in the past when we configured all the different solutions we found out some interesting parts where we see it's more complex, it's not so complex, or maybe we have to reflect on, we have to remember certain some certainties on a reverse proxy. Let's start, because we're having a KEMP session today for sure, let's start with the KEMP ESP. If I say the simplicity, it's really easy. So you will see in the configuration part a little bit later that it's not really difficult to configure it. If we see the IP address requirements, per service, which means like per exchange, per SharePoint, per other web form, whatever we want to publish and use the reverse proxy solution, we need an external IP address. As well, SSL and TLS re-encryption is supported. We have port redirection in it. When we want to have high availability as well, we need at least two systems. Which is nice because if we have the load balancer already deployed and the load balancer is high available, we have also this in place already. And for sure, KEMP can be virtualized. So we have the VLM systems, so we can also use it in our virtual environment. Supported by all the well-known hypervisor vendors. A firewall on KEMP is still required because, as we said, a reverse proxy server is not a replacement for a firewall. But do we need a load balancer when we have KEMP in place? No. And that's one of the huge advantages. If you have KEMP already deployed, you don't need another load balancer because you can either use KEMP as a reverse proxy with ESP, you can use them as a load balancer, or you can use both. So this makes the solution very cost efficient. The IIS ARR solution is very complex for the deployment. I don't know if somebody read already blog articles or something similar about it. So you need to dig a little bit more deeper before you understand and can deploy it. An advantage is we can use consolidated IP addresses because we can make also redirections based on the path where we want to access our web servers. Also, the other important parts like SSL are all supported. Then let's go through the Windows Server 2012 or 2 web application proxy. I think one of the most interesting features as well, which Microsoft at the moment offers. The forwarding, it's really, really easy to deploy. The pre-authentication part can be very complex because the Microsoft system, especially this one, which is fronting to the internet, has really some nice features where we can access different properties of our objects in Active Directory, which we can use for pre-authentications and especially also for single sign-on. But believe me, this is not so easy as it sometimes looks like. It can also be consolidated with the IP addresses, and all the other settings are also the same like we had it with the other both solutions before. But there is one thing we definitely keep in mind is we need the Active Directory Federation services. That means, like, if we compare it to some other solutions, if we have high availability, we have 2 servers, the web application proxy itself is 2 servers. In the DMZ, we need to load balance this. We need definitely a load balancer in front of the system, so we should definitely not use Windows network load balancing. And we need 2 internal servers. So it's Active Directory Federation services. And if you make them high available for the web application proxy, the ADFS servers need to be redundant as well. Then the UAG server. I think you need to get used to the system. It's not that easy, but learnable. Other parts which you are familiar with from the side of TMG are very, very similar in configuration. Definitely different to TMG here, it's that you need also pair service which you want to publish, also one single public or maybe netted IP address. All the other parts are as well similar, and a UAG, it's not yet supported for any kind of virtualization. That doesn't mean you cannot do it, but it's still possible. And the UAG should not be a replacement for a firewall too, but it can be used for this. Squid, on the Linux side, well, if you are very familiar with Linux, maybe you might be able to configure it. It's a lot of scripting, especially when you have SSL re-encryption active. This script which you have to write, the configuration script, it's very complex. So especially for our friends who mostly do some Windows configurations. And firewalls, it really, really depends on the vendor. I cannot say it's easy, I cannot say it's complex, but definitely think about if you want to publish Lync, make really sure you tested it twice. But where do we position the systems, and where are the similarities between all the different features? If we see it on the system placements for IIS ARR and for Squid, for example, you put it into the DMZ. We have the pre-authentication as well available. We can do this with a domain joined system, with a non-domain joined system. We can use LDAP or LDAP-S, however you want. But truly, if you use it, and even I think it's imaginable, if you have IIS, you have a web server, and if you have a web server functionality, you definitely need a load balancer. My question will be there already. If I use a load balancer and I make my decision for KEMP, why shouldn't I use the ESP Pack, which makes things definitely a little bit more easier. But how does it look like on other systems? Okay, on Windows Server 2012, as I said, and as you can see here in the illustration, you see the server itself. I hope you can see also my mouse, the server, which is positioned in the DMZ, which is the web application proxy feature on Windows Server 2012 R2. And you can see here on the left side also the internal deployed server, which is responsible for Active Directory Federation services. What the system itself is doing, you configure the ADFS, and from ADFS, that web application proxy queries some configuration settings, and then you can start configuring the publishing rules already. It also, when you want to have high availability available and deployed, you need a load balancer as well. It's the same. It acts as also a web proxy. In web, it's something where we need definitely a load balancer for. An interesting alternative with this Windows Server 2012 R2 solution, truly if you want to deploy Office 365. So we still have then already Active Directory Federation services in place, so we can consider it, and for sure with the KEMP load balancers, even in the same deployment we might have also a very good solution applied. The UAG itself can be either deployed parallelly to the outside firewall, but still please ensure that you have an internal firewall deployed as well. You can also put it into the DMC, but this is the most common deployment which you have. If you have high availability, you can use the feature from UAG, so you would not definitely need a load balancer in front of the system, and it also can handle all the features which we requested. But how it looks like for KEMP. The Edge Security Pack is just a feature which we need to enable, and we put it also for sure in the DMC. So it's the same position like some of the other solutions, if it's regardless of Windows Server 2012 or if we have IIS or some other solutions. It's quite similar to the TMG, so we just have it in between of our inside and our outside firewall. We can use pre-authentication, as I said. It's a very important feature. We have the high availability included with the load balancer. So if we have a second load balancer in place, we just join this both load balancer to one array, and then also the configuration is easy and automatically published to the second system, which is then responsible for failovers. The most nicest part for me, I think, of this solution is we do not need any additional devices, because if I still have a load balancer in place, I activate it and I reduce really the system counts and also the complexity in the entire environment, because I just only concentrate on my load balancers and I don't care about other systems. So as I'm aware about KEMP, I will be also very quickly aware about the ESP feature set. We can also use VLAN segregation. This depends on if your security requirements still allow this or not, but if you use the load balancer for KEMP, for example, inside of the DMC and as well separated via several VLANs for the internal servers, you can really spare some money. And especially for smaller customers, this might be a very interesting solution as well. So be aware about VLAN hopping, but even if you have VLAN hopping and you have an external directed firewall, you are already very safe, and VLAN hopping might not be this easy anymore. Now we come to the part where I said we saw the feature, we saw the placements, and now I am talking since a couple of minutes about KEMP. It's really easy. What I've done for you here, and I try to explain it, what will happen if you configure the ESP, and I've made you a video, and this video really starts from very beginning. So I applied it on a Hyper-V virtual machine. I downloaded the VLM. I implemented it. I gave it the first initial IP address, and then you see the video really starting from the first connect to the web interface on the KEMP system itself. So let me see it. I hope you can see also the cursor moving. The first, it's a license agreement. I agree the license, and now I just generate my KEMP ID. I give it a password, and I see, because if I want to deploy it very fast, I must not buy the KEMP load balancer immediately. I can deploy immediately and buy also the real license up to 30 days later. So that's really something nice. If we need a feature, I can download, I can go on, and I can start every of the services immediately and make them available. What I'm doing here is first, after I activated it, I have to log into the system. Now the try version is active. I do so. I change the default password on the system. I always, and you have to remember on KEMP, you always have to click the set button, whatever you are changing. This is also valid for the passwords. This is valid for several other configuration parameters as well. So now it's done. The server itself is active. I log in again because I changed the password, and the next steps which I will now do is I have to see the system settings and have a double check is everything is fine. Please remember this is a demo environment, so it's not fully configured with every feature for load balancing. But what I'm doing here is I configure the first network adapter. I change the host name of the server so it's easily reachable also via a full qualified domain name. I set the host name, then I give them my DNS search domain so that the full qualified domain is now complete. And that's probably already everything I have to do on the server. I check some more settings like the routes. I see if everything else on my default gateways are ready. And then I start the configuration. As I said, we want to also publish Exchange. I need to ensure that single sign-on can be used. For single sign-on, I still need the internal Active Directory domain name. In our example, it's acp.cie. Then you also see that we are not having a public domain internally used. And I can access then Active Directory via several protocols. I can also use the default protocols which apply, so I don't make any configuration changes here. But I have to give them the IP address or full qualified domain name of one of my domain controllers. I set the domain controller, and I need to authenticate myself. So no pre-authentication would be very helpful if I do not authenticate the request as well. So what I'm doing in Active Directory, I create a special service account for this. I activate the service account and go back to the KEMP load balancer. After I have activated this, I type the test user into the field for it. I set the test user, and I will also apply the password to the KEMP load master here. Now the password. After this is done, we are ready to go now for the main configuration. So let me see and let me show you what we have to publish, for example, for Lync and Exchange and several other applications. As I said, I made it happen for SharePoint as well as for Office Web Application Server and so on. I will show you one very special configuration which is not really well known with Exchange when we publish especially our Outlook web applications. So you will see how we do this one. Here I will mark it for you, remember it. We need definitely to do something for the LM authentication proxy feature, and we have to get some abbreviation mailboxes from Exchange server later when I configure this for you. I started setting up some content rules. There you see the different paths where we want to access the systems. As you will definitely at the end receive also our presentation, you can have a look always into the presentation and see what kind of path we have already configured. I set up now a new rule. There you see how I did this one for the LM authentication proxy service, which we need for Exchange 2013. I type it, I try to match the string. I made a small mistake here so that you have an example as well how we can still correct it. Very important is, and don't forget that you said also ignore case. It should not be case sensitive itself. But what we see is a path is not really ending after we have set the first forward slash. So, and the directory itself after this one is also continuing. We need a star at the end. I can easily change the rule, so if you make a mistake, you must not start a reconfiguration on it. You can just simply go back and change it. We have done it for all the services for Exchange, for Office Web Application Server. I published also very simply the portal for SharePoint, Exchange. That's a quite common configuration which we have set up here. But now we have to configure ESP, and we do this one on the virtual services, which is quite similar for these people who are already aware of you guys with load balancing. So I give them a virtual IP address, which is the address where my incoming request will be hit on the load master. It can be also a public IP address depending on the design of your DMZ zone. And I define my port. So it's an HTTPS port, and it's also the TCP protocol. I have to give this service a name. In this case, here I'm configuring ESP for Office WAC. So the WAC or WAS server, we have some different names. So it's the server which we need for all the Office servers 2013. It's responsible for presenting web-based Office features, so like Word or PowerPoints. Then I configure the other components of my virtual service. Here are several technologies which I said for load balancing. It's not yet fully required for ESP, but I still have to activate it because the ESP itself is a subset of features within one of our virtual services. I have to apply SSL. I did not apply yet any valid certificate, so it's still a self-signed certificate on the server, on the load master itself. This is just for demonstration purposes. But now we want to configure ESP because we are talking still about the reverse proxy server feature. I just simply click it, and what we see is we activated immediately the reverse proxy feature. It's not really something complicated. We don't have a lot of settings. We see a lot of loggings. I have a single sign-on domain, which I configured earlier in some of the steps. This is necessary for pre-authentication. If I don't need any pre-authentication, I just say there is no domain set configured. But I need my allowed virtual host. An allowed virtual host is actually the internal target of our server. And we see this one for the Office Web Application Server 2013. I have a configured full qualified domain name. I paste it in here, and we are good to go and define our virtual directories. Because our web servers itself, when we want to publish it and we want to use the reverse proxy feature itself, we need a directory as well. What you see is, and don't forget this one, when you configure a load master, always click the set button. Do not fill in all the information in one shot and then try to click the set button. So you have to do this every time individually. And as you can see, it's really going quite fast. Here, the client authentication mode offers us a basic authentication, no authentication, or, and this is a very important feature, form-based. The form-based authentication is really well known from TMG, so we have the same implemented with the KEMP ESP security pack as well. At the end, I need also to give the target servers a real assistance. What I'm doing is, first I want, similar to the load balancing side, I want to have a health check on it if the server is still online or not, because it's the same way, as I said, I can use the ESP feature and I can load balance. Even if I have only one server, it's truly nice if I'm going back to the home page, to the main page of the load master, and can see that my service is still available and my service will be still online. So after this is done, I type the IP address of my real internal server, as we had here, our Office Web Application Server. Here it comes. We ensure that port 443 is activated. Then you can also see that we can use here different forwarding methods. I configured it. I clicked it OK. And then I'm still going back to see what we are configuring. And what we have here is already a perfect publishing. But nevertheless, there is one thing which is important when you want to use ESP and other reverse proxy services. We have to configure several parts for Exchange, because the path itself for Outlook web application also includes not the normal user mailbox. We have the arbitration mailbox as well, so we have to figure it out. And there is one well-known path, which is OWA, and then the GUID of this mailbox. But how do we query it? I just type in a small reminder, like our GUID. I then open my management shell at Exchange. I just easily put in the command, which I have pre-configured, and I will get the GUID directly presented. Here it is. I marked the GUID. I just copy the GUID, and we finish the entire configuration on the load master. So I'm going back to it. Then I will change my placeholder with the GUID, because I have to exclude this special path on all reverse load balancers. I put the star in behind, I set it, and it's done. Now we have everything configured, and here it is. You see all services up and running, ESP, Exchange, which are all the Exchange publishing. We have even published port 25. It's also very easy possible with it. And I'll remind you once more, we still have here our content matching rules. That's it. The server is ready, and we have configured an entire reverse proxy solution for everything Microsoft is offering for Office 2013. I hope it was quite interesting for you. So let me continue, because we only have 45 minutes and I try to stay in our given time frame. There are some misunderstandings sometimes on load balancers, which are also valid then when we deploy it as a reverse proxy server. A lot of people really say load balancer increase latency. If we have the load balancer in, and if we have also ESP activated, it's a small processing delay, which is definitely smaller than 10 milliseconds, so it's not really a lot. And this means if we consolidated both together, load balancing and the ESP pack, we have even some speed advantages compared to some other solution. Then we said network load balancing on Microsoft might be sufficient. Not really, because of we have different requirements how we want to load balance and how we want to publish. If you have multiple servers in the back, then we probably use also load balancing, and load balancing can also do more, especially for example like cookie persistence, for example. We say how load balancers might increase complexity. Well, not really. As you saw, it's really easy to configure. It's really straightforward, and once you are aware about it, you got maybe also some help for the configuration of the servers which are sitting behind. It's really somehow easy. You can easily learn it, and it's also easy in maintenance for you. The next is, let me get the summary. What we learned about the Edge Security Pack provided by KEMP is very important. I have definitely no additional costs. If I have a Loadmaster, the Edge Security Feature Packs comes with it for free. So we really can't spare some additional money which we would either spend for other solutions. It's a very secure and very easy to use feature, as you saw, which is also easy and better for the deployment, because it just simply speeds it a little bit up, and in planning you do not require a lot of pre-planning services ahead of the implementation. No additional application knowledge required, only KEMP Loadmaster. That means, like, in conjunction with the server behind which we want to publish, if we know and if we are aware about what the server itself requires, there is no additional special knowledge needed beside of this little configuration on Exchange, which you still have to know if you want to use the Edge Security Feature Pack. It's very simple for the implementation of high availability features. If I have a second Loadmaster, I just connect and I sync both systems together. I replicate automatically the configuration to the second system, and therefore also high availability. It's really easy in configuration, easy in maintenance. It's a very stable and reliant solution. It's an appliance. It's highly designed for these special features, for load balancing and for reverse proxying, and nothing else. That means, like, it has simply to be stable, and it's stable on the appliance version. Is also very stable regardless the hypervisor which you use when you virtualize this solution. Let me say why we decided also on our side to go with KEMP Technologies. KEMP Technology is really a well-known partner in the market for load balancers. There are really a lot of load balancers already deployed for Microsoft solution. We have counted maybe a couple of months. No, it was mid of last year where we counted how many load balancers were already deployed. So it's really a lot. But what I want to highlight is when in the first year you have a vendor support included, which is not really common. So if you need still some help, if you need to get used to the KEMP load balancer, you have the support included as well, which also includes truly the upgrades if there are new versions or new releases available for you. What load balancers do we have? And there is one thing which I need really to highlight again. It's the architecture. If we see the architecture, it's now available in 64 bits. So if I have 64-bit, then I really can upscale my solution. So I can handle much more incoming requests, and also a lot of more of transmitting SSL encryption or re-encryption connections to the servers behind. And Truly, please do not forget it depends on the power which you have left on your virtual environment. And if you see this one, and if you get also the double high availability features which are then included in the virtual solution, it's really something which is simply called amazing. But nevertheless, if you don't like virtual environments, or maybe you don't want to virtualize whatever request you have because of you want to use a appliance version, there is a huge variety of different servers. You have a small version from the 2200 up to 5300, where we can see it just have some different values for layer 4 and also for other connection which can be concurrently handled on the system. Just let me also inform you, at the moment until end of the year, I believe, we can just clarify this with Alexander a little bit later again, but I think at the moment until end of the year, if you purchase a virtual load master, you will also get the Geo Load Master for geographical load balancing simply for free. This is also quite interesting if you want to deploy, for example, redundant data centers. There is some part compared to F5 which I need to highlight, because on my side I really come along with a lot of different solutions, as I said, in Lync, and especially when you are doing support. So very often I also see F5, and there are some parts where I really say maybe I better would propose the KEMP solution, because if you have an F5, it can really do a lot of things. But we are talking about load balancing and reverse proxy server features. If we have this, I want to have a solution which is easy, straightforward, and supportable. And if I'm doing a lot of things on an F5, believe me, I have seen very, very huge misconfigurations because of a very complex system. So important is, if I have already a lot of systems deployed, I want to go straightforward, I want to go easy, and I want to have it supportable as well. I don't want to use, when there is a problem, hundreds of hours before I actually figure out that I have done some geographical rerouting of whatever TCP packages, which should actually be handled in load balancing and not rerouted to any other environments. And therefore, as I KEMP, it's really on the right place. And when we have problems, everything on KEMP we could figure out much more faster compared to some other solutions. But that's personal, and it's a little bit out of the experience as a support engineer. So let me jump over this. What we can actually do is you find a free download version. That's actually what I've did in the video which I presented to you. Just please really go there, just download it and have a look yourself. We might even be able to support you a little bit on my blog. You will also find several information about how you configure a load master in conjunction to Lync. And we are now at the end of the presentation, and once more, I think I made it exactly, yes, 1 hour. So that's what we proposed. I can only say at the moment, very thanks you for joining our webcast, and I hope it was really interesting for you and you learned a few things and you're excited about trying out the KEMP system and try the ESP package. Now I would open and also get Alexander in when we have some additional questions. Maybe we can do this also with your microphone. So you can go in and add in your audio, and let's have the next 10 or 20 minutes some discussion about the KEMP technology systems which we propose to you. Thank you, and have a nice, what there's Alex? Okay, yeah, he's already here. Have a nice afternoon, I want to say.
Yeah,
Alex,
too.
welcome.
Many thanks for your time and for your great presentation. I think it was very informative for everybody of us, and I'm now in the honor to answer some questions out of the chat, and I will start with the first. The question was, is IP address consolidation planned for or the per service? Or the per service is the final design for ESP. This guy has left, but I think for others probably it would be interesting. You can use the IP address consolidation stuff with the nested virtual services, the sub-virtual services already. So there is already a finish for that, and it's not a future request. It's already in the product, so you can use sub-virtual services. Another very good question about single sign-on stuff. why configure a single sign-on domain object if it will not be selected in the service as shown in the video? Well, this was just an example how you can configure a single sign-on domain, use it for this virtual service or use it for different other virtual services. And you can have multiple single sign-on domains on the same load master configuration, so you can split also the kind of organizations, let's say. So this is quite an open field where you can discuss about that. Then there was many questions regarding is it possible to download this webinar later? Yes, you will get a download link and you will get the slides and also the video, and you can download it and watch it as many times as you want. Then there is a question from a very good point that this is something what is requested by many people, talking about two-factor authentication. We are implementing an ESP version 2, which will be hopefully released end of this year, and then we will support two-factor authentication as well as NTLM authentication and Kerberos delegations. So yes, you will be able to use ESP for two-factor authentication.
That's great to hear, yes.
Yeah, that's a big feature request. Many people are asking for that. Just be in mind that the VLM 200, so the smallest virtualized load master, and also the load master 2200 or 2400 are not enabled for ESP. So if you need ESP, you need to go to the VLM 2000 or higher, or at least to the load master 2600 or higher. And there was the open question from you, Thomas. As you heard, there is an offering for our VLM 2000 and VLM 5000. If you buy until end of this year, we will make you a present and add the Geo pack as well for those load masters.
This is really great to hear, because we have a lot of customers as well for Lync and also for Exchange using really a dual data center concept, and this is amazing for them.
Yeah, I think so as well, and it's a very big request for many people. Then there is a question which is quite interesting for me as well, because I was not thinking about that at all until today. Can you please elaborate about software specs to assign to a VLM instance? For example, the Loadmaster 200, what would be RAM and CPU requirements? Well, this depends on the loads. Yeah? The load masters, the virtual load masters are mainly designed for a defined SSL offloading functionality, the SSL transactions per second, which are not going hand in hand with the needs of the load. What kind of many connections can I handle? If you are not interested in SSL offloading, then you can click at the what do I want to say? Sorry, I lost the line.
don't worry, I just remind you. We were talking about the mega cycles which we might use if we use SSL offloading.
Exactly, and the connections, yeah, I got it back. Right. So if you have, for example, just layer 4, layer 7 load balancing with ESP without SSL offloading, then you can use the VLM 200, the VLM 2000 as well, even if it's limited for only 1000 SSL transactions per second. But the design, how big a virtual machine needs to be, belongs to your needs. So you need to check about your needs, and then you can define how big the RAM and the CPU connections is.
Yeah. Just let me add it from the generic part. Load balancing itself do not require a lot of RAM, because it's not really processed in the RAM. What's happened is, if we have SSL offloading, it's a lot of calculation. So they are running a lot of mathematic transaction. So if we have thousands of connections coming in and they need to be re-encrypted, this is really a huge CPU load. So we have to consider this in our design, if our virtual environment can handle this. From the side or from the perspective of RAM, it's not really this intensive, but it can be very intensive if we do some offloadings. If you want to have hundred thousands of incoming connections, you probably design it therefore quite a little bit more different. If you have hundreds or a few hundreds incoming connections per second, there are virtual appliances truly the most best solution for instead of hardware, but you have to really consider and you have to see also what's going on with the CPUs. At the moment you have 6 core systems, so just monitor your environment and then see what's actually happened on the virtual environment, and then probably you'll figure out that the CPU load is not so high. Even Lync is not really consuming a lot, or Exchange, and even also SharePoint not. So you will find out that you have a lot of free capacity on your system. So that we have to validate, and then you see what you actually could be, or what you would be able to handle with your actual virtual environment. And then you will be mostly surprised, I guess, that you can handle really a lot incoming connections, even for SSL encryption, when the environment was properly designed on the virtual side. I think you agree.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. The next question I want to answer is, there was the question following in the single sign-on domain object, if the LDAP protocol is not selected, what is the default used? It's not encrypted. So if you don't select the protocol, it will be just basic LDAP and nothing else. So if you want to use secured LDAP, then you have to choose LDAP S, or if you want to use Start TLS, then you need to choose Start TLS. Another question was a bit earlier. Can you use the where was it? Can you publish ADFS servers with KEMP Loadmasters? Yes, for sure. And we did already do some projects with this feature for customers who are doing a mixed environment with on-premise or a cloud-based environment where they needed to publish ADFS servers. So yes, you can. Yeah. What else is there? Many thanks I read here. Good question. I bought 2,200s this year. Do you have any deal special for upgrading to 2,600 so I can get the ESP? I suggest you go to your certified partner, or if you are a certified partner, go to your contact at KEMP. We are offering nearly always through the whole year upgrade plans from lower devices to higher devices. Just feel free, contact your contacts. If you don't know who's your contact, you can send the email to the support team and they will find out who's the right guy for you. Yeah. Which forms-based authentication in Exchange 2013 there is a special configuration? No. Forms-based authentication with KEMP ESP is supported as long as you are doing on the back-end side the basic authentication part, and that should work out of the box quite easy.
This is really straightforward configuration.
Yeah. Do you support vMotion or live migrations with VLM? No, that's not supported. The only thing what is supported on the hypervisor HA functionality is the VMware high availability stuff. So when the host crashes, which hosts all the virtual machines, and the machines are started on a new host newly, then it will work, but live migration or vMotion is not supported. Thomas, you had a question?
No, I want to say, only coming back to the Exchange side, what we have done in the video there is, in Exchange there are arbitration mailboxes, and this mailbox type has to be excluded. So that means like we need to forbid even access to the system or to this special GUID. That's one of the feature or configuration features which we had to use. It has nothing to do on forms-based authentication, so if you want to have form-based authentication, it's already one step ahead of this, and there will be configured, and then it's just used as we did it with the TMG before. So it's really a straightforward configuration, out of the box supported. There's only one special port. We have to exclude one special path only.
Yeah. Okay, so I think let's finish. You all will get an email with the information where you can download the slides and the information in the presentation. And so I need to say thank you again to Thomas offering such amount of time and effort. And I'm looking forward to have another presentation and another webinar with you in the future. So many thanks again, Thomas.
Yeah, also Alex, thanks a lot. And I think Diary is also in. Also Diary, thank you for making it possible that we could have the webcast happen today. To every participants, well, from the rest who's left at the moment, thank you for joining us. And feel free if you have questions to contact us. And we might be happy to answer your questions as well via email.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, then let's close the presentation.
Let's check with Diary that she recorded everything and stop the recording right now.